Hey guys. Tonight, we're slipping back into the candlelit corridors of ancient imagination, to a world where moonlit towers rose above black oceans, and stubborn princes paced cold marble floors in defiance of their royal fathers. You're standing there now, barefoot on chilled stone, as the wind howls around your imprisoned form, rattling the barred windows with every angry gust. Outside, thunder growls like an old lion guarding its last territory, and lightning stitches jagged silver scars across the sky. Inside, however, it's only you, Prince Qamar Al-Zaman, who feels equally stormy within. You probably won't survive this if your father's wrath has its way. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your father, King Shahriman of Khorasan, is not used to disobedience. He rules with the absolute certainty of a man who believes even clouds gather on his orders, and his temper has been tested by everything from incompetent viziers to the rising costs of imported cinnamon. But nothing compares to his fury upon discovering that his only son, that's you, flatly refuses to marry. At 20, you're supposed to carry on the dynasty, forge alliances, and produce heirs with the same efficiency as hawks producing feathers. Historians still argue whether this tale was a veiled critique of forced marriage customs in medieval Persian courts, or simply an exaggerated fable to amuse audiences on chilly desert nights. Either way, your refusal is unprecedented. Some courtiers whisper that you're cursed by a desert spirit, others that you're hiding some secret love for a low-born girl. The truth is more straightforward. You just haven't found anyone worth sacrificing your freedom for. Your father's patience finally collapses like a termite-riddled throne. "Lock him in the tower," he roars, voice echoing off turquoise-tiled walls. Perhaps solitude will make him see reason. And so here you are, behind thick iron-banded doors, guarded day and night by eunuchs with bored expressions and sharper scimitars. The tower smells of moss, old parchment, and the bitterness of exile. Every evening, servants bring you trays of saffron rice, lamb stew, and rosewater sherbet, each dish cooling rapidly on brass plates. You toy with your food, staring into flickering oil lamps that cast trembling shadows up vaulted ceilings. Somewhere far below, your father dines on roasted quail with sumac and lemon, surrounded by ambassadors droning on about border treaties. He rarely thinks of you these days, except to spit curses for your stubbornness between bites. Outside, the storm grows wilder. Lightning dances along the copper dome of your prison like a mischievous spirit. It's said in ancient Persian folklore that lightning is the sword slash of Ahura Mazda, striking down devils in the dark. Oddly comforting, you think, imagining the god of light himself smiting your unseen enemies. You wander to your window slit, fingers curled around the cool stone frame. Rain pelts the sill, icy and biting. The scent of wet earth rises with each gust, mingled with the smell of old bronze from your chained window lattice. You press your forehead against the chill, eyes closing, and in the darkness behind your lids you see shapes swirl. A young woman's silhouette, hair billowing like black silk across a moonlit courtyard. You wonder if dreams can visit prisoners, or if they too have been forbidden entry by your father's decree. Suddenly, thunder explodes directly overhead, rattling your ribs with its deafening growl. A guard outside the door coughs nervously. You almost chuckle. Afraid of the sky's temper? You murmur, though no one hears. Your voice falls dead against stone. Your chamber has few furnishings. A low bed carved from sandalwood, its legs shaped like lion paws, a copper basin for ablutions, a shelf lined with books of poetry, astronomy, and treatises on herbal medicine. A quirky tidbit here. Some of these texts recommend crocodile dung mixed with honey as an effective facial treatment to ensure a prince's skin remains unblemished even under stress. You stare at the pot of fragrant almond oil beside your basin and think, at least it's not crocodile dung. You pick up a slim volume of Khayyam's verses. Outside, the storm continues its tantrum, pelting your window with fresh torrents of rain. A leak drips from the corner ceiling, echoing softly across the silent chamber. You read aloud. The moving finger writes, and, having writ, moves on. Nor all thy piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it. The words settle into the quiet like embers sinking into cooling ash. Fate moves on, with or without your permission. A flicker of irritation rises, at your father, at fate, at yourself for not bending when it would have been easier. Yet beneath it simmers curiosity, even excitement, for what tomorrow's imprisonment will bring. Perhaps a decision to marry and end this punishment. Perhaps a dream that shifts your resolve forever. The wind sighs around the tower, a mother's whisper cradling you as your eyelids grow heavy. Somewhere in the distant dunes, lightning dances unseen, its silent flashes illuminating sand and sky alike. You drift to sleep, unaware that tonight, destiny itself will slip through your locked door, in the form of two invisible immortals who find your stubborn humanity amusing. You awaken to a thin gray dawn filtering through the narrow window slit, painting streaks of pale light across your rumpled sheets and the sandalwood bed carved with lion paws. For a fleeting moment, you almost believe the storm has passed, that your imprisonment will end today, that your father will burst in with tears of regret and lift you into his arms like a child. Then the reality of damp stone walls and the clink of guards changing shift outside your door shatters that brief fantasy. But far beyond your lonely tower, above the clotted clouds and dawn mist, two immortal beings hover in a dimension unbound by time or mortal gravity. They are jinn, ancient spirits of smokeless fire, and today they have chosen you as the centerpiece of their bickering. "Admit it," snarls Maymuna, a towering jinnia with dark bronze skin and hair flowing like braided midnight rivers down her back. "Princess Budur is far more beautiful than any mortal prince." "No," retorts Danash, a slim male jinn with emerald scales rippling across his arms. "Qamar Al-Zaman is unmatched. His face would shame the moon. Historians still argue whether this entire story was a coded metaphor about celestial bodies personified. But even if so, your princess couldn't rival him." Maymuna crosses her arms, her bangles clinking like distant bells. "Fine. Let's see who is truly more beautiful. Bring the prince to Budur while they both sleep. That way, our judgment will be unclouded by their petty mortal words." And so begins their mischief. You lie half dreaming, clutching your thin cotton pillow, unaware that Danash's invisible claw reaches through the layers of your reality. You feel only a sudden weightlessness, a lifting as if your soul slips from your bones, and your chest rises with a soft, startled breath. In an instant, you vanish from your bed. Below, your guard jerks awake, thinking he heard a sound, but sees only an empty room, the blankets tossed aside in your absence. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in the fortress city of Kaylani, Princess Budur lies curled in her rose silk sheets. Her chamber is perfumed with burning sandalwood, and her hair fans out across brocade pillows embroidered with peacocks and almond blossoms. She sleeps restlessly, her brow furrowed in dreams that dissolve before she can grasp them. Maimuna and Danish materialize, crouched in the shadows of her marble colonnade, their eyes glinting with supernatural light. Between them floats your slumbering form, suspended like a rag doll caught in a desert breeze. "Place him beside her," Maimuna orders. Danish smirks and gently lowers you to the princess's bed. Your cheek presses against her shoulder, and her sleeping arm curls instinctively around your waist. You both lie there, breaths mingling. Two strangers tangled by fate's playful hand. Budur stirs. Her lashes flutter, brushing her cheeks like moth wings. Her lips part in a silent question as her brow creases further. You sigh softly in your sleep, your breath warm on her neck. A quirky tidbit for tonight. Medieval Arab beauty rituals included kohl eyeliner ground with date pits to strengthen vision and ward off curses. Budur's lashes are blackened with such kohl, giving her an aura of fierce regality even in sleep. You might appreciate this detail later, should you ever awaken to gaze at her directly. "Look at them," Maimuna whispers. "Two flawless creations of flesh." Dahnash rolls his eyes. He's clearly superior. His skin is luminous as polished jasper. Her lips are like damask rose petals. His nose is straighter than an arrow shaft from Damascus. Her waist is slender as a reed swaying over running water. His shoulders are broad as the gates of the Grand Mosque. Historians still argue whether these exaggerated poetic comparisons arose from real ideals or simply from court poets desperate to keep their heads attached. Maimuna sighs. For hours, the jinn continue their silent contest, watching you both breathe in perfect tandem. Moonlight shifts to dawn glow, dappling your joined forms in apricot and silver. Neither of you awakens, trapped in a sleep deeper than mortal exhaustion, a sleep woven by jinn magic. At last, Maimuna flicks her fingers. "Enough. Return him before humans notice, but leave her with his ring as proof of this night's judgment." Dahnash frowns, but obeys. He slips your signet ring from your right hand and slides it onto Budur's delicate finger. Then, with a curling gesture of his clawed hand, your body lifts weightlessly once more. Budur's fingers clutch at empty air. She murmurs in her sleep, brow relaxing as if releasing the tension of a lifetime. The jinn depart into the dawn haze, leaving only the faint scent of sandalwood and ozone behind. You awaken in your tower just before noon, the sky bright with scattered gold clouds, as if the world itself has been washed clean overnight. You feel different, though you cannot name the feeling. A strange, aching sweetness pulses through your chest, and when you touch your hand to your lips, it feels as though you've kissed moonlight itself. Outside, the eunuch guards exchange gossip about a merchant imprisoned for tax evasion. Lightning no longer flickers across the horizon. Birds flit between the courtyard olive trees, their chirps slicing the quiet morning like slivers of jade. You roll onto your side and sigh deeply. Sleep still clings to your limbs like soaked silk. And you wonder if your dreams were simply a reflection of loneliness, or something more profound, unseen. Dahnash floats above your tower, smirking triumphantly. The prince is clearly the fairer one, he whispers to the dawn wind. But Maimuna, drifting away on a wisp of rose-scented breeze, simply laughs in her throat, as though she knows this is only the beginning. The sun drifts westward as you sit by your narrow window slit, legs folded beneath you on the chilly stone floor. You've eaten nothing since dawn, not the spiced lamb stew, not the sweet apricots dusted in cardamom, nor the thin flatbread brushed with clarified butter. Hunger gnaws at your belly, but it is nothing compared to the hollow ache left behind by last night's dream. Or was it truly a dream? You stare down at your bare hand, frowning slightly. You remember wearing your signet ring when you fell asleep, heavy gold set with a dark blue sapphire engraved with your royal seal. But now it is gone, vanished. You search under the pillow, beneath the cot, within the folds of your robe, but it is nowhere. Historians still argue whether this missing ring was symbolic of a prince's loss of self-determination or merely a plot device to propel the tale forward. Regardless, your chest tightens with anxiety. That ring was your identity, your inheritance, your proof of lineage. Without it, who are you? Far away in Kailani. Princess Budur awakens to the cool hush of pre-dawn. A thin breeze ripples through the silk curtains embroidered with myna birds and pomegranate blossoms. She stretches languidly under her damask coverlet, her slender arms brushing against something cold on her finger. Eyes still blurred with sleep, she lifts her hand into the gray light and squints. A ring glitters there, thick, masculine, royal in its stern sapphire design. She jerks upright, her long black hair tumbling down her back like an oil slick. Her heart thrums with a strange fear, but beneath it coils an intoxicating thrill. She remembers, at least half remembers. A man, no, a prince, with skin pale as moonstone and hair dark as wet slate. His cheek pressed softly against hers, his chest rising and falling in sleep beside her, his warmth seeping into her dreams like rose water into flour. Budur presses the ring to her lips. Its metal is still faintly warm. "Who are you?" she whispers to the silent chamber. "Where did you go?" A quirky tidbit. In medieval Persian and Arab courts, rings often served as talismans, engraved with Quranic verses or astrological sigils to protect against jinn, curses, and betrayal. Budur wonders if this ring is such a talisman or a message from the jinn themselves. She slips out of bed, trembling with purpose. Attendants rush forward to dress her, layering turquoise and silver silks over her body, fastening her belt of filigree gold roses, braiding her hair with lapis beads. But today she moves mechanically, answering their questions with absent nods. Her mind hums with a single resolve. I must find him. Later that afternoon, in your prison tower, the air hangs hot and heavy with the smell of sun-baked clay tiles. You lie on your cot, staring at the ceiling. Shadows of birds flutter across its surface, winged silhouettes passing like thoughts you cannot quite catch. You remember the woman from your dreams, the press of her cool fingers around your waist, the scent of sandalwood and jasmine in her hair, the faint rise and fall of her chest. The vision clings to you with such intensity that your ribs ache from it. Was she real? You wonder. And if so, where is she now? Below your window, eunuchs murmur about market prices. Someone mentions that garlic is rising in cost because a jinn was seen riding a camel through the garlic fields at dawn, scorching entire rows with his fiery breath. You smirk weakly. People will blame jinn for anything. Yet here you are, secretly suspecting jinn of stealing you away last night. Danish hovers unseen at the roof's edge, chuckling to himself as he watches your frown deepen. Poor mortal, he whispers, scales shimmering in the afternoon sun. You think yourself so mighty, yet one night's sleep has undone your sanity. In Kailani, Budur stands on her balcony, the city sprawled below her in labyrinthine tangles of white stone alleys and palm gardens. The ring gleams on her slim finger. She closes her eyes, feeling the sapphire's cold certainty bite into her skin. I will find you, she vows to the drifting orange clouds. Even if I must scour every corner of this earth. Historians still argue whether Budur's sudden love was a metaphor for human yearning or simply an entertaining device to ensure listeners stayed awake through Scheherazada's nightly storytelling. Either way, the princess wastes no time. She summons her father's astrologers, demanding they read the stars to find her destined beloved. They shuffle nervously, peering into bronze astrolabes etched with the signs of Capricorn and Scorpio, whispering formulas of planetary hours and lunar mansions. But the heavens remain silent. No prince's name appears amidst their careful calculations. Only an ambiguous omen of journeys and reunions. That evening, the princess locks herself in her chamber. She places the ring beneath her pillow, curls onto her side, and closes her eyes. Sleep comes in fitful waves, breaking on the shores of her anxiety. You drift in and out of her dreams, your eyes shadowed with longing, your lips curved in a silent promise. Meanwhile, back in your tower, sleep eludes you entirely. The sunset bleeds copper and rose through the window slit, staining your skin with dying light. Your throat tightens with an unnamed grief. You roll onto your side, clutching the edge of your thin cotton mattress, wondering if you will ever see her again, if she ever truly existed at all. Night falls, washing your prison in obsidian quiet. Beyond the stone walls, beyond the mortal plane, Maymuna and Danash drift among the black clouds, still locked in their argument. He is more beautiful, Danash insists. No, Maymuna retorts softly. For beauty is nothing without courage. And soon, little prince, your courage will be tested, and far away in her moonlit tower. Princess Budur dreams of your scent, your touch, your ring pressing cool reassurance against her skin, unaware that before dawn comes again, her life will be shattered and remade in ways neither mortal nor jinn could ever predict. The dawn wind rolls across your face as you wake, eyelids crusted from a night of restless dreams. Your bones ache with the cold of the tower floor where you eventually collapsed, refusing the comfort of your cot. The iron-banded door remains shut, your guards silent outside. A pigeon coos somewhere on the parapet, breaking the hush with its throaty lament. You push yourself upright, blinking at the pinkening sky and the thin streaks of cloud gathering like brushstrokes across morning's canvas. You have never felt such exhaustion, not even after days of riding at your father's side on his campaigns against rebellious desert tribes, not even after wrestling lessons with your old tutor, who swore you would never be king without knowing how to throw a man twice your size. This is different. This tiredness seeps from within, as though your very soul is bruised. Far away, across the turquoise seas and burning salt flats, Princess Budur too awakens before dawn. Her chamber is scented with saffron oil and cooled by tall bronze braziers filled with sandalwood ash. She lifts her hand to study the heavy sapphire ring once again. Its weight feels both foreign and inevitable upon her slender finger. She rises and stands before her polished copper mirror, searching her reflection for answers. Dark eyes lined in kohl, high arched brows, lips tinted rose with carmine balm. A veil of black silk drapes her hair. She looks exactly as she did yesterday, and yet she feels transformed. A woman bound by a promise made in dreams. She calls for her chief lady-in-waiting. "Send word to my father. I must speak with him alone." Historians still argue whether Budur's decision was inspired by pre-Islamic Bedouin tales of journeying princesses in disguise, or if this narrative was simply inserted by storytellers to entertain restless caravanserai patrons through the desert night. Either way, her resolve is unbreakable. Her father, King Gayur, sits upon his ivory throne, inlaid with mother-of-pearl and flanked by peacock feathers shimmering under morning sun. Budur kneels before him, her silks pooling around her like spilled turquoise ink. "Father," she says softly, "I have been unwell. My dreams are haunted by a man I have never met. My heart burns with longing for him. I fear I will die if I do not find him." The king strokes his pointed beard thoughtfully. "What man is this? Who dares visit you in dreams? I know not his name," Budur whispers, her gaze lowering to the marble floor veined with silver. "Only that he is a prince, and that his ring now binds my fate to his." She raises her hand, showing him the heavy sapphire ring. The king squints at it, frowning at its masculine cut and royal engraving. "Then you must marry," he declares, gesturing to his viziers. "We shall summon envoys from every kingdom. He will come to claim his bride." But Budur's heart sinks. He is not among those princes. She knows this as surely as she knows her own pulse. That night, her father's advisors meet under hanging glass lanterns, the flame shadows dancing like jinn across their lined faces. They whisper plans to declare her madness if she continues this refusal. One of them, a lean old man with henna-stained fingernails, mutters a quirky tidbit. "Perhaps she has been possessed by a desert ghoul. Once, my cousin's daughter was cursed for stepping on a gull's shadow near the salt marshes." The others nod gravely. Curses are simpler to manage than love. Meanwhile, you lie curled on your cot, sleep tugging at your mind like a tide dragging a dying boat out to sea. You dream again of her dark eyes and silken hair, of her hand slipping your ring onto her delicate finger. Her scent coils around your senses, sandalwood, jasmine, and something deeper, like warm earth after rain. But just before dawn, your dream turns. You feel yourself being lifted, light as dandelion fluff, your hair brushing against something soft and perfumed. The world blurs. For a fleeting instant, you sense another presence, powerful, ancient, amused. Then you wake with a gasp in your tower bed, sweaty and shivering despite the humid dawn. A faint indentation marks your right ring finger. The sapphire weight is gone, but its memory presses there as insistently as an iron shackle, unseen in the shadows above. Danish curls his tail around the tower finial and watches you with gleaming eyes. Soon, stubborn prince, very soon, in Kailani. Budur's desperation deepens. At midnight, she rises from her restless bed, calls her chief lady-in-waiting, and says, "Prepare my traveling robes. I will find him myself." Historians still argue whether Budur's subsequent actions were inspired by real princesses who fled arranged marriages for hidden lovers, or if Scheherazade merely embroidered a woman's bravery into her tale to teach the Sultan about loyalty and courage. Either way, the princess slips away under the cloak of darkness, dressed in the garb of a young merchant prince, a robe of deep indigo wool, a broad leather belt, a turban wrapped around her shining hair. She rides out through the hidden postern gate before dawn. Only her lady-in-waiting knows the truth, weeping softly as the guards salute the young prince, who departs upon a strong white stallion. As dawn creeps over the eastern hills, its light catches on the sapphire ring glittering upon Budur's slender finger. She clenches it tightly, whispering to the wind, "Wait for me, whoever you are, wait." And far away, in your silent tower, you wake with tears dampening your pillow, though you cannot say why. Outside, the pigeons coo, the guards shuffle their sandals, and the rising sun sets the tower dome alight with molten gold. Mid-morning heat thickens within your stone chamber, curling the edges of parchment scrolls stacked haphazardly on your narrow shelf. Dust motes float lazily in golden shafts of sunlight, swirling around your restless form as you pace barefoot across the cold floor. The guards outside murmur about water rations and whether the city's watermelon crop will survive this unrelenting sun. You feel none of that warmth. Inside, you are winter. Your heart aches with a grief you cannot name, a longing so deep it carves you hollow. You barely touch your food. The rose sherbet tastes like ash, the spiced lamb stew like chewed leather. Even the sweet dates stuffed with walnuts fail to rouse your senses. That morning, your father, King Shahriman, summons his vizier. The two men sit on cushioned thrones under a high turquoise dome painted with golden stars and silver crescents. The king's beard, once black as date palm trunks, is now streaked with white, and lines furrow his brow like dry riverbeds. He still refuses to marry? Shahriman growls, drumming his thick fingers on an armrest inlaid with ivory and lapis. What prince rejects every noble maiden in the kingdom? Historians still argue whether this obstinate characterization reflected real-life princes or was Scheherazada's veiled criticism of self-absorbed rulers. The vizier bows deeply. My king, perhaps his dreams trouble him. He speaks to no one. He eats little. His eyes are shadowed. Shahriman grunts. If he dies of his own stubbornness, at least I will be free to adopt another heir. Meanwhile, in your tower, you lie on your back, staring at the cracked plaster ceiling. You barely notice the crows cawing outside or the soft ring of the call to prayer floating up from the city's marble mosques. You are too consumed by a single vision. Her face, dark eyes fringed with kohl lashes, a proud, fine nose, full lips tinted the soft pink of first light over desert dunes, hair so black it glowed blue where moonlight kissed it. You remember how her sleeping arm curled around your waist. You remember the cold bite of your sapphire ring slipping from your finger, a quirky tidbit for your quiet suffering. Medieval Arab physicians believed lovesickness could cause real fever, digestive collapse, and heart failure. They treated it with honey infused with bitter herbs to shock the system back into balance. You wish bitter herbs could shock this yearning from your bones. That evening, the eunuchs bring your dinner. You wave it away. The older guard, with a long scar down his cheek, mutters under his breath. Better he wastes than marry some poor girl with that death stare. You pretend not to hear him as you press your forehead to the cool window frame, watching the sun sink like a molten pomegranate beyond the horizon. Far away, Princess Budur rides hard through the night, her white stallion's hooves striking sparks from desert stones. Dressed as a prince, she passes through oases where date palms sway under moonlit skies, and caravan men gaze after her with wary respect. She carries only 2 saddlebags, one of dried figs and pistachios, the other of gold coins stamped with her father's seal. At dawn, she reaches a caravanserai. Dust clings to her indigo robe and veils her hair with fine grit. She dismounts stiffly, leading her horse to the watering trough, and sits under a tattered awning to eat stale barley bread dipped in goat's milk. A merchant, old and wide-bellied, sits beside her, chewing pistachios. Young prince, you travel alone? She nods curtly, lowering her gaze so her dark lashes shade her eyes. I seek someone, he chuckles, wiping crumbs from his beard. We all do, my son. Some seek gold, some seek knowledge, and fools seek love. He spits a fragment of shell onto the sand. Only love leaves you empty-handed and sunburned. Budur says nothing. She lifts the sapphire ring to her lips and kisses it silently before slipping it back into her robe. Her heart beats with a quiet certainty. She will find him, or she will die trying. Historians still argue whether Budur's solo quest was a feminist subversion or a simple narrative inversion designed to thrill weary listeners through Scheherazada's endless night vigils. But in that moment, beneath a pinkening sky, she is nothing but a woman driven by love's fierce compulsion. Meanwhile, in your tower cell, You begin to pray aloud, not the formal prayers the court imams taught you, but a broken, desperate chant to whoever might listen. If you are real, you whisper to the silent dawn. If you walk this world and not merely my dreams, please come back to me. Outside, pigeons gather on the parapet, cooing softly as the first rays of sun strike their iridescent necks. You close your eyes, feeling those warm rays spill across your face. For a moment, you imagine it is her hand brushing your cheek, and far beyond your locked chamber, Maymuna the Jinnia drifts upon a cool north wind, gazing down at your slumped shoulders with something like pity flickering through her ageless eyes. "Soon, Prince," she murmurs to the morning breeze. "Soon your fates will entwine once more, and neither jinn nor mortal will remain untouched by what follows." The sun has barely crested the palace walls when Princess Budur's father, King Gayur, summons his daughter to the grand audience hall. The marble floors gleam under towering cedar columns, and colored glass lanterns swing gently in the early breeze. Budur enters, dressed once again as herself in a robe of violet silk embroidered with gold date palms. Her face is calm, but her eyes burn with silent defiance. "Daughter," the king begins, his voice echoing across the tiled chamber. "You are young, beautiful, and wise. The time has come to choose your husband. All the princes of neighboring lands are gathering for your selection ceremony." Budur bows her head, concealing the storm raging within. None of them is him. None. Historians still argue whether such public princess choice ceremonies were historically common or poetic invention designed to intensify narrative tension in medieval epics. Either way, the court bursts into frenetic preparation. Maids polish brass mirrors until they reflect torchlight like captured suns. Servants sweep rose petals across the mosaic floors, and musicians rehearse flute and oud melodies behind lattice screens. Meanwhile, Budur retreats to her private chamber. She kneels by her bed, clutching the prince's sapphire ring to her lips. Tears spill silently down her cheeks, smudging her kohl and leaving dark tracks upon her flushed skin. "If you are real," she whispers into the hush, "come to me. Please. My life without you is a hollow husk rattling in the wind." That night, unable to bear her grief, she falls into a fitful sleep. In her dreams, she sees his face once more, pale moonlit skin, dark hair tousled against a thin pillow, lashes casting feathery shadows upon sunken cheeks. He is thinner than she remembers, eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. His lips move in silent prayer, and though she strains to hear, the words remain muffled behind the walls of dream. She wakes before dawn, her silk sheets damp with sweat, and rises with sudden resolve, calling her chief lady-in-waiting. She commands, "Prepare my traveling robes once more, but princess," the woman whispers, eyes wide with fear. "Your father will exile you if he discovers your disobedience." Budur lifts her chin. "Then let him exile me, for I am already lost without him." A quirky tidbit for your sleepy curiosity. In medieval Arabia, it was believed that exile without water was a death sentence worse than execution, as it denied the soul's dignity in burial rituals. Budur, however, fears only life without love. She dresses herself in male garments again, a deep indigo robe tied with a silver-buckled leather belt, her hair coiled beneath a white turban wrapped expertly around her head. She fastens the prince's ring upon a leather thong hidden under her tunic, close to her heart. As she gazes at her reflection in the bronze mirror, her jaw appears stronger, her eyes more determined, though sorrow still flickers within their dark depths. In the gray pre-dawn light, she slips through hidden palace corridors, her sandaled feet whispering over mosaics of lotus flowers and peacocks. The smell of jasmine bushes drifts through open arches, mingling with the musty tang of cold marble. She passes sleeping guards slumped against carved stone columns and steps out into the empty courtyard. There her white stallion awaits, saddled and snorting softly in the chilly breeze. She mounts swiftly, pressing her lips to its warm neck in silent gratitude, then rides through the postern gate into the waking desert beyond. As the sun rises behind her, setting the dunes aglow with molten gold, she rides hard across the salt plains. Small lizards scurry from her path, their scales shimmering like tiny bronze coins. Thorny acacia trees dot the barren landscape, casting ragged shadows across the sand. Her heart thunders in rhythm with her horse's hooves. "I will find you," she chants silently. "I will find you." Meanwhile, far across sea and mountain, you awaken once more in your tower cell. The morning breeze carries the scent of blooming orange trees from the palace gardens far below. You inhale deeply, trying to taste sweetness upon your tongue. But your mouth is dry as old parchment. You rise slowly, muscles stiff from days of inactivity. As you stretch your aching back, a scrap of poetry drifts to your mind, something you memorized as a boy. "My love is a desert. My tears are its salt. My longing, the sun that burns all paths home." You sigh, the words dropping from your lips like falling petals. Outside, the guards shift positions, sandals scraping stone. A pigeon coos from the parapet, bobbing its iridescent head as though mocking your melancholy. Historians still argue whether such intense romantic despair reflected actual royal lives or served as cautionary tales, warning young listeners against overindulgence in poetic notions of love. Either way, you feel yourself withering like a date palm unwatered. That evening, as dusk spreads its indigo veil across the sky, your father orders the vizier to visit you. The old man enters, robes rustling across the floor, his lined face shadowed under the flickering oil lamp he carries. "My prince," he murmurs softly, seeing your gaunt cheeks and fever-bright eyes. "You must eat. You must live." You lift your gaze to him, hollow and ancient despite your youth. "I have lived, vizier, but without her. What is this life but a prison within a prison?" The vizier lowers his eyes, throat tightening with pity he dares not express aloud. He leaves the lamp burning upon your shelf and exits, his footsteps echoing down the winding stairs. Alone again, you curl into your thin mattress as darkness swallows your chamber. Through the window slit, a crescent moon rises silver and silent above the city's sleeping rooftops. You whisper to the night, hoping your words travel across dune and sea to her dreaming ears. "Wherever you are, whoever you are, remember me." And far beyond the desert horizon, Princess Budur rides under the same moon, her tears hidden in the shadows of her turban as her horse carries her ever closer to a fate neither jinn nor mortal can undo. The desert dawn breaks pale and trembling over an endless expanse of sand dunes, rippling like frozen golden waves. A lone figure rides westward, Princess Budur, disguised as a young merchant prince, her indigo robe flapping behind her like a silent banner of resolve. The sapphire ring thuds lightly against her chest with each hoofbeat, a rhythm echoing her heart's whispered prayer. Find him. Find him. She rides through date palm groves where dew pearls hang heavy on emerald fronds. She passes goat-herding Bedouins who nod respectfully to the stern-faced prince trotting past on the white stallion. She trades gold coins for hard barley bread, goat cheese rolled in thyme, and a water skin filled with sweet well water tinged faintly with copper. At dusk on the 5th day, she reaches a city built into cliffs of honey-colored limestone. Flat-roofed houses stacked like children's blocks climb the rocky walls, with terraces overflowing with basil pots and trailing scarlet bougainvillea. Her exhausted horse clops through narrow alleys where lanterns flicker against carved wooden screens, and the scent of cumin, roast lamb, and bread drifts from open kitchens. She dismounts at the city's largest inn, leading her trembling horse into its lamplit courtyard. A servant rushes forward to take the reins, bowing low to the dusty prince. Historians still argue whether such inns truly welcomed lone foreign travelers with royal courtesy, or if storytellers romanticized them to comfort homesick listeners along caravan routes. Regardless, Budur is grateful for the warm basin of rosewater the servant offers, and the small lattice-windowed room overlooking the bustling street below. That night, lying upon a straw mattress covered with thin striped blankets, she clutches the sapphire ring in her palm and whispers, "I will not turn back until I find you." Meanwhile, far across shifting sands and rugged mountains, you trudge across the endless dunes under a punishing sun. The night before, your guard, moved by your half-delirious pleas, slipped your cell key beneath your pillow and pretended to sleep as you crept past, barefoot and silent as a shadow. Freedom tasted of fear and dry desert air. Now, each step sinks you ankle-deep into burning grains. Your prison silks, once white and pristine, hang sweat-stained and torn upon your gaunt frame. Your mouth is parched, tongue thick as leather. You no longer care about your kingdom, your throne, or your father's wrath. Only her face matters. Only the certainty that she exists beyond the horizon keeps your legs moving. A quirky tidbit to season your sun-dazed misery. Medieval Arab physicians believed drinking small amounts of camel urine mixed with milk could treat dehydration and fatigue. As you stumble past a lone camel caravan resting by a dune, you wonder whether such desperate measures will become your reality before this journey ends. By dusk, your vision swims with heat mirages. The dunes ripple like molten copper, and you see her everywhere, her eyes peering from wavering shadows, her hair blowing across your cheeks in phantom caresses. You sink to your knees, palms pressed into hot sand, and whisper hoarsely, "Where are you?" Historians still argue whether your character's sufferings were symbolic representations of spiritual purification through ascetic wandering, or purely melodramatic embellishments for Scheherazada's tales. Either way, your ribs stand out stark beneath your sunburned skin as you struggle to your feet once more. Night falls swiftly upon the desert, blanketing it in velvet darkness pricked with a billion icy stars. The wind picks up, carrying the dry smell of sand and distant sagebrush. You wrap your thin robe tighter around your trembling frame and continue onward under the sharp gaze of the crescent moon. Meanwhile, in her cliffside inn chamber, Princess Budur dreams of you again. This time, your eyes are closed, lashes resting like soot upon your hollow cheeks. She reaches out to touch your face, but her fingers pass through you like mist. You open your lips to speak, but no words emerge. She wakes with tears pooling upon her pillow, throat tight with grief. At dawn, she descends to the inn courtyard. Merchants mill about, loading camels with brass trays, bales of indigo-dyed wool, and sacks of spices, coriander, saffron, cumin, cloves, their scents mingling in a heady perfume of distant lands. She purchases fresh dates and flatbread from an old woman with henna-stained hands before leading her stallion into the waking streets. As she mounts, a robed pilgrim passing by gazes up at her sharply, His lined face cracks into a knowing smile as he murmurs, "You ride with tears hidden under your turban. Young prince, may God grant you the reunion you seek." She bows her head wordlessly, urging her stallion onward. His words coil around her chest, warm and heavy as a protective amulet. That evening, as the sun sinks into a distant lavender horizon, you collapse against a dune's sloping side. Your breathing rasps in your throat, the sand cooling rapidly beneath your feverish palms. You raise your eyes to the stars freckling the indigo sky, each pinprick of light a silent witness to your desperation. "Please," you croak to the dark, "let me find her, or let me die here where at least the sky is wide enough to hold my dreams." Far above you, Danash drifts invisibly upon the desert winds, his emerald-scaled arms folded across his chest, golden eyes glimmering with amused pity. "Soon, stubborn prince," he whispers to the crescent moon, "soon your paths will cross, and neither mortal nor jinn shall remain untouched by the tangle of your fates." The desert dawn arrives in silent splendor, streaking the sky with ribbons of pale pink and gold. You awaken where you collapsed against the dune, your robe crusted with wind-blown sand, lips cracked and bleeding from thirst. Every bone in your body aches, yet beneath the exhaustion coils a tiny ember of resolve. She is out there. I will find her, or die beneath this sky searching. You rise unsteadily, wiping grains from your face. A thin breeze carries the scent of sagebrush and distant camel dung, proof that a caravan passed nearby during the night. Shielding your eyes against the rising sun, you scan the horizon for movement. Far away, Princess Budur rides through the final stretch of rocky wasteland before dawn spills across the earth. Her stallion's breath mists in the cool twilight as he picks his way along goat tracks, winding between jagged basalt outcrops. In her saddlebag, the sapphire ring clinks softly with each stride, a hidden talisman drumming her chest with its secret beat. She has traveled for days, passing shepherd encampments where men in striped wool cloaks roasted lamb over acacia fires, through bustling caravan towns thick with the scents of myrrh, dried limes, and sheep's milk soap. Her silks are sweat-stained, her throat raw from days of speaking only to barter for food and water. That morning, she reaches a cluster of palm groves surrounding a freshwater spring. Traders have pitched striped canvas tents around it, their camels kneeling patiently as bales of cardamom, cinnamon bark, and turmeric are offloaded for sale. Budur dismounts and leads her stallion to drink. The cold water soothes his trembling flanks and calms the fever of her pulse. Historians still argue whether medieval springs such as these were truly neutral grounds, where even blood-feuding tribes laid down arms to drink side by side, or whether such idyllic details were romantic embellishments to reassure listeners that justice and peace could exist, if only in stories. Budur crouches at the water's edge, cupping her hands to drink deeply. The water is cool and slightly metallic, tasting of minerals and life. She closes her eyes, feeling it slip down her throat like mercy. Nearby, an old merchant with a long white beard watches her thoughtfully. He sits cross-legged under an olive tree, sipping tea from a cracked clay cup. His robes are patched but clean, and his eyes glimmer with desert wisdom. "You ride alone, young prince?" he rasps in a voice like rustling papyrus. "What do you seek?" She opens her eyes, droplets clinging to her lashes. "I seek someone I love more than my life." The old man nods slowly, stroking his beard. "Then you will find them. Love does not permit itself to be wasted." A quirky tidbit to brighten your dusty morning, in medieval Arab lore, It was said that any woman who dreamed of a man 3 nights in a row was destined to marry him, for such dreams were woven by the jinn with threads of certainty. Meanwhile, many miles away, you wander into a small oasis town just after dawn. Your robe hangs in tatters, your hair tangled and stiff with sweat and sand. The guards at the gate eye you warily, but one takes pity and hands you a cup of tepid water from a goatskin bag. You gulp it down, coughing as it burns your parched throat with relief. You stagger into the town's central square, where merchants set up wooden stalls, unrolling bolts of indigo linen, brass oil lamps, and carved rosewood boxes inlaid with bone. The smell of frying flatbreads rises in fragrant clouds. Your stomach twists with painful hunger, summoning the last of your dignity. You approach a stall piled high with dried apricots and pistachio halva. The vendor eyes your ragged silks with suspicion. "Have you coin, stranger?" You shake your head weakly. "Please, a scrap of bread. Anything." He snorts and turns away, muttering under his breath about beggars and curses. Your vision dims with fatigue and shame as you stumble back, collapsing against a sun-warmed wall. The market spins around you, flashes of patterned robes, glittering jewelry, baskets of bright spices. You lower your head, willing your pounding heart to slow. Suddenly, a shadow falls across you. Blinking upward, you see a figure in a deep indigo robe, a leather belt with a silver buckle cinched tightly around a slender waist. A white turban wraps a proud head, from which glint dark eyes shaded by long lashes. Your heart lurches painfully against your ribs. Budur looks down at you, her breath catching in her throat. She sees the gauntness of your cheeks, the cracked lips, the dark hair matted with sweat and sand. But beneath that ruin, she sees the face etched into her dreams night after night. You open your lips to speak, but only a ragged sigh escapes. Tears spring to your eyes as you rasp. "Is it you? Or am I dying?" Historians still argue whether their reunion in the market square was an emblem of divine orchestration or a narrative convenience to resolve Scheherazada's nightly tension. But for you, there is no debate. This moment is eternity. Budur kneels beside you, her silks rustling softly against the dust. She cups your stubbled cheek in her trembling hand, her thumb brushing away sweat and tears. "It is me," she whispers. "I have found you." Around you, the market continues in its early bustle, camels grumbling, vendors shouting prices, children laughing as they chase each other between stalls. But all you hear is her voice. All you see are her tear-bright eyes gazing into yours with love fierce enough to cleave the world in two, and far above the awakening town. Maymuna drifts upon the dawn breeze, her bronze skin glowing with quiet satisfaction as she watches the threads of fate knot tightly around you both. "Finally," she murmurs to the rising sun. Their story truly begins. The marketplace hums around you, a tapestry of scents, sounds, and shifting shadows, roasting lamb sizzling over hot coals, donkeys braying as they drag carts piled with clay jars, the rhythmic slap of carpet beaters dusting bright woven rugs. But all these fall silent within the small circle of dust where you kneel before her. Budur leans closer, her veil fluttering in the morning breeze scented faintly with saffron and cardamom. Tears pool in her dark eyes, lashes trembling as she takes in the sight of you, gaunt, sunburned, hair tangled with wind-blown sand, your robe ripped across the chest. Yet, to her, you are beautiful beyond anything she ever imagined. She reaches under her robe and pulls out the sapphire ring tied upon its leather thong. The gem catches the morning light, flashing deep blue as the desert sky at midnight. Gently, with hands trembling from relief and disbelief, She slips it back onto your finger. "Now it is where it belongs," she whispers, her voice breaking. You try to reply, but tears clog your throat. All you can do is clutch her hands, pressing your cracked lips to her smooth knuckles. You close your eyes, and for the first time in weeks, your ragged breaths come easily. A quirky tidbit. In medieval Arabian courts, the public restoration of a stolen or lost ring was considered a sign of divine reconciliation, witnessed by humans and jinn alike to seal a fate no mortal could unravel. A passing merchant, seeing you kneeling before the young prince, smirks and mutters, "Another beggar seeking favor." But when Budur lifts your chin with surprising strength, her eyes blazing with protective fury, he quickly lowers his gaze and shuffles away. Historians still argue whether their sudden recognition was poetic license inserted by Scheherazade to impress the Sultan with narrative efficiency, or a subtle mystical assertion that love transcends reason and memory. Either way, Budur rises and helps you to your feet. "Come," she commands softly, her tone steady despite tears streaking her kohl-lined cheeks. "You must eat. You will die if I do not feed you soon." She leads you to a shaded booth, where a silent old woman fries flatbreads upon a brass pan over glowing coals. Budur pays with a silver coin from her belt pouch, receiving 2 hot breads smeared thick with date syrup and crushed pistachios. She tears pieces and presses them to your lips, ignoring the curious glances of other diners. Greedily, shame forgotten, you devour each sticky, fragrant mouthful until strength returns to your trembling legs. Later that morning, Budur leads you to her rented chamber above the olive merchant's shop. The stairs creak under your combined weight. Inside, the small room smells of cedarwood chests and rosewater-soaked cotton. Pale light filters through a pierced brass lantern, dappling the walls with shifting patterns. You collapse upon a woven reed mat, your back pressing gratefully into its rough support. Budur kneels beside you, her slender fingers brushing hair from your sweat-streaked brow. Her touch is cool and decisive, as though she has known your face for 1,000 years. "Rest now," she murmurs. "I will watch over you." For a time, you drift in and out of a feverish sleep. You hear snatches of street sounds drifting through the shuttered window, mule bells, women gossiping about turmeric prices, the faraway wail of a flute. Each time you open your eyes, you see her still beside you, legs folded beneath her, spine straight as a spear shaft. Her gaze never wavers from your face. Finally, near sunset, you wake fully. Your mind is clear. You rise unsteadily and sit facing her, your knees brushing her silken robes. For a long moment, you simply breathe together, listening to each other's quiet, ragged inhales. "Who are you?" you whisper, your voice hoarse with awe. "How did you find me?" She smiles, weary and luminous. "I am Princess Budur, daughter of King Gayur, but I am also your beloved. I searched every horizon for you, and now, here we are." She unwraps her turban, and her black hair spills down her back in glossy waves, catching the last rays of sun that slip through the lattice window. You stare, entranced, as though watching dawn itself pour into the room. Historians still argue whether this revelation scene was Scheherazade's way of showcasing female courage and agency, or a romantic ideal designed to soften a sultan's hardened heart night after night. But within this small rented chamber, there is no debate, only truth. Your chest tightens with a sudden terror. But how can this be real? Perhaps I am dying in the desert and dreaming this final mercy. She reaches out and cups your cheek firmly, her thumb tracing the line of your jaw. Her touch is warm and commanding. Does this feel like death? You shake your head, swallowing tears. No. It feels like home. Outside, darkness falls softly over the city. Lamps flicker to life along dusty alleyways. The muezzin's call rises like a drifting prayer through the indigo hush, and merchants fold up their cloths, counting copper coins by lantern light. Budur rises and stands by the window, gazing out at the spangled night. "We cannot remain here long," she says without turning. "Your father seeks you, and my absence will soon spark search parties across kingdoms." You look up at her silhouette framed against the moonlit sky. Your heart expands painfully within your rib cage. For the first time in your life, you are unafraid of what comes next, because wherever it leads, she will be there. Far above the rooftops, Maimuna and Danish drift upon the midnight breeze, their translucent forms shimmering silver and emerald in the moonlight. "Finally!" Maimuna sighs, her voice deep as sleep itself. They are reunited, but the story is not yet finished. "No," Danash replies with a fanged grin. "For where love walks, chaos follows." Dawn arrives with a hush of gray light sliding between the slats of the wooden shutters. You wake before Budur, the thin reed mat creaking softly under your shifting weight. For a moment, you watch her sleep, her hair spread across the mat like a pool of black ink, her lashes casting delicate shadows upon flushed cheeks. Her breathing is even and deep, a soft sigh with each exhale that makes your chest ache with tenderness. You wonder if this is what peace feels like. Outside, merchants begin unrolling bolts of cloth, and the cry of a pomegranate seller rises faintly through the crisp morning air. You lean forward and brush a stray lock of hair from Budur's brow. Her eyelids flutter, and dark eyes open slowly, focusing on your face. A small smile curves her lips. "Good morning," she whispers. You bow your head, unable to speak as tears threaten again. But you swallow them back. You are a prince, and though the world has stripped you of robes, servants, and kingdom, you will not let it strip you of dignity before her. Budur sits up and stretches her arms overhead, joints cracking lightly. "We cannot remain here," she says. "Your father's men will search every inn, and my absence will soon rouse the fury of my father's viziers." Historians still argue whether this mutual flight was intended as a commentary on the limitations of royal duty, or simply a thrilling narrative device to keep listeners rapt by the lantern's glow deep into the night. You nod, your decision clear. "Then let us leave together." After a hasty breakfast of goat cheese, olives, and flatbread dipped in sweet black tea, you pack your meager belongings into an old leather satchel Budur purchased from the olive merchant below. Budur fastens her turban once more, tucking her hair up with swift, practiced fingers, while you tighten the frayed sash around your robe. As the sun climbs above the eastern rooftops, the two of you slip down the narrow stairs and out into the waking streets. You walk side by side, and though passers-by see only a ragged beggar and a young merchant prince, within your chest blooms a defiant, unbreakable love. You reach the western gate as the guards begin their morning changeover. Budur steps forward confidently and flips a gold dinar into the captain's palm. He barely glances at your worn robes before waving you both through. Beyond the city walls, the land rolls away into low golden hills dotted with thorny acacia and wild sage. The air is cooler here, scented with morning earth and distant camel herds. Budur leads her stallion off the main road and into a narrow wadi lined with smooth granite boulders. A quirky tidbit for your morning journey. Medieval Bedouins believed wadis, dry riverbeds that flood suddenly after desert rains, were guarded by jinn called gadar, who could appear as owls, goats, or flickering lights to to mislead travelers into deadly gullies. As you walk, Budur turns to you with sudden seriousness. "We must find shelter before nightfall. There are jinn in these lands who delight in confusing lost souls under moonlight." You nod solemnly, half believing, half exhausted. "At this point," you say with a weak chuckle, "I would welcome a jinn if they could carry me to a hot bath and a bowl of lamb stew." She grins sideways at you, her teeth flashing white against her sun-darkened skin. Careful what you wish for. By mid-afternoon, your legs feel heavy as sandbags. The sun beats down relentlessly. Though Budur shares her waterskin with you at regular intervals, tilting its bronze mouth to your cracked lips, each gulp tastes of copper, leather, and life itself. Finally, as dusk approaches, you reach an abandoned caravanserai perched upon a rocky bluff overlooking the salt plains. Its sandstone walls are crumbling, the wooden gate hanging askew, but within lies shade, safety, and silence. Budur leads her stallion through the broken archway. Inside, the courtyard is littered with wind-blown sand and stray goat droppings, but the small corner chamber she chooses is swept clean by the breeze. Historians still argue whether such abandoned inns were common waypoints for fugitives and exiles, or simply convenient narrative settings for clandestine meetings and secret unions in Scheherazada's tales. Either way, as night falls, you are grateful for its sanctuary. Budur ties the stallion to a cracked pillar, then builds a small fire in an old clay brazier, using driftwood she gathered along the way. The flames flicker weakly, casting trembling shadows across your hollowed cheeks and her tired, beautiful face. You sit close together, knees brushing, sharing dried figs and stale barley bread softened in water. The meal is meager, but neither of you complains. Silence settles between you, not uncomfortable but profound, as though words might shatter the delicate miracle of this moment. Finally, Budur speaks, her voice hushed. "Do you think they will find us?" You glance at her, studying the curve of her brow, the firmness of her chin, the shadows beneath her eyes that speak of sleepless nights spent riding towards an uncertain dream. "They might," you admit softly. "But if they do, I will fight for you, even if all I have left is my dying breath." She turns to you, her eyes glimmering with unshed tears. "And I for you," she whispers. Outside, the desert night unfolds in vast indigo silence. A warm breeze rustles the crumbling walls, carrying the distant howl of a desert fox and the faint scent of wild thyme crushed under wandering goat hooves far above. Maimuna drifts upon the dark, silent wind, her bronze skin shimmering under starlight. Beside her, Danish curls his serpentine tail around a crumbling parapet and sighs with faint exasperation. "They have no idea what awaits them," he mutters. Maimuna's smile is as old as moonlight. "No, but their hearts are ready. That is all fate requires." The desert dawn unfurls like a pale silk veil over the crumbling caravanserai. You wake to the soft rasp of Budur's breathing and the faint crackle of embers in the clay brazier. For a moment, you lie still, eyes tracing the jagged lines where stone walls meet the early sky. The air is cool, scented faintly with burnt wood, and the earthy tang of dry sage drifting in through the broken archway. Beside you, Budur stirs. Her eyes flutter open, lashes casting crescent shadows on her cheekbones. She turns to you, and in that quiet hush of first light, you see a resolve in her gaze that makes your chest tighten with both dread and hope. "We cannot linger," she says, voice husky with sleep yet edged with iron. "My father's spies will be scouring every oasis, every trader's camp by now, and your father's guards." You interrupt her with a dry chuckle. Would rather drag me back in chains than let me vanish into legend. She smiles wryly and reaches to touch your temple, fingers brushing a stubborn lock of hair from your brow. Then we must become ghosts before they can bind us. Historians still argue whether their escape from the caravanserai was a true event, or Scheherazada's way of prolonging suspense with cliffhangers that made a tyrant's eyelids heavy enough to spare her life for another night. You gather what little you have, your tattered robe cinched tight with a length of knotted rope, Budur's small satchel of coins, and a bag of figs she bartered from a wandering goat herd before dusk the previous evening. She douses the last coals with a splash of leftover water, and together you lead the white stallion through the broken gate back into the sleeping desert. By mid-morning, the sun is a pitiless white coin overhead. Sand crunches underfoot, pocked with the tracks of desert foxes and faint goat prints. Budur walks ahead, leading the stallion by its worn leather bridle. You follow, fighting the ache that claws at your calves with each mile. A quirky tidbit to distract you from the blister rising on your heel. Medieval desert travelers sometimes stitched small, polished discs of silver into their sandals to reflect heat away from the soles of their feet. An ingenious trick lost to most city folk who never tasted the desert's fury. You crest a low ridge and find yourselves overlooking a wide salt flat stretching to the horizon, shimmering in the heat haze like a frozen white sea. In the far distance, tiny dots move, caravans crawling slowly along ancient spice routes that wind toward the mountains to the west. Budur points. If we reach that caravan by nightfall, we can merge with them, disappear in their dust. Your throat is dry, but you find the strength to grin. A prince and a princess, hiding as camel traders? She flashes a smile, teeth gleaming against her sun-browned skin. Better than royal prisoners in separate towers. You press on together under the savage sun. Hours slip by, marked only by the crunch of salt beneath your worn sandals and the soft clink of the sapphire ring resting against your chest. Sometimes Budur hums a low tune, a lullaby her nursemaid taught her when she was too small to pronounce her father's name. It winds through the hot air like a breeze that soothes the raw edge of your exhaustion. At dusk, the sun bleeds into the salt flat, painting it in swirls of rose and orange. The caravan grows clearer, camels laden with rolled carpets and brass urns, herders wrapped in striped wool cloaks, a few women sitting astride mules, faces hidden behind linen veils. Historians still argue whether real caravans tolerated runaways or whether this element was a narrative flourish to highlight the generosity of desert folk, a virtue that Scheherazade used often to sweeten her darker tales. Budur steps forward boldly as the first herder spots you. He is an old man with sun-leathered skin and a turban wound so thick it looks like a coiled serpent on his head. He squints at your ragged form and the weary stallion at Budur's side. "You come from the salt flats?" he asks in a voice like dry reeds. Budur nods. "We are humble folk seeking safe passage west. We can pay." She flips him a small silver coin. The old man studies you both, eyes lingering on your gaunt frame and sunburned cheeks. For a heartbeat, you fear he will turn you away. But then he spits into the dust and waves a gnarled hand. "Keep up," he mutters. "Fall behind. The dunes will keep your bones." So you fall in line with the caravan as dusk deepens into star-flecked night. The camels grunt and sway, their shadows thrown long across the salt by the flickering oil lamps tied to poles along the caravan's flanks. Budur walks close beside you, her hand brushing yours every few steps. Neither of you speaks. The silence between you is not heavy, but sacred, a promise whispered only through each soft touch, each fleeting glance. Somewhere near midnight, As the caravan halts beside a dry wadi to rest the beasts, you both curl up together on a worn wool blanket beneath the open sky. The stars blaze cold and bright above, the Milky Way pouring across the heavens like a spilled jug of powdered sugar. A single owl hoots from a thorn tree nearby, a soft warning in the hush of the desert. Budur shifts closer, her warm breath brushing your ear. They will keep hunting us. You nod, eyes fixed on the swirl of stars. Then let them hunt. I'd rather die free beside you than live forever behind palace walls, far above. Maimuna hovers upon a drifting current of warm night air, her bronze wings folding close. Beside her, Dakhnash flicks his emerald tail with a quiet snort. "Foolish mortals," he murmurs with a grudging respect. "They choose love over power every time." Maimuna smiles, her voice softer than sand sliding over stone. "And thank the stars they do. Without them, who would remind the world that freedom is worth the price?" Dawn arrives in a hush of dusty rose and pale gold, revealing the caravan stretched across the salt flat like a great beast at rest. Camels kneel with their long necks folded into sleep. Herders snore beside flickering oil lamps, and the thin morning breeze smells faintly of trampled sagebrush and old wool. You wake with Budur's head resting upon your shoulder, her hair tickling your collarbone where it has slipped loose from her turban. For a fleeting moment, you allow yourself to imagine a future unchained by kings and jinn, just the two of you walking unknown roads until age and sand wear you into legend. But reality seeps back with the chill breeze. Budur sits up, rubbing her eyes with the heel of her hand, then swiftly rewraps her turban. Her dark eyes flick to you, and you see the same unspoken dread mirrored there. "They will not stop hunting us," she whispers. You nod, throat tight with fatigue and resolve. "Then we must disappear further." As the caravan breaks camp, Budur approaches the old herder who allowed you to join them. She bows deeply. "Honored uncle, where do your roots take you?" He spits into the sand and scratches his wiry beard. "West, to the mountain passes, then north to the great islands where kings sell pearls larger than pigeon eggs." Historians still argue whether these references to Pearl Islands pointed to Bahrain, Kish, or legendary hidden archipelagos invented to dazzle listeners by the flickering lamplight of Scheherazada's chambers. Budur presses her hands together. "Then we travel with you to the islands." He shrugs, waving his gnarled hand at the long line of camels. "Walk fast, eat little, pray often, and do not slow us down." So you march together across the endless flats. Each day, the sun rises merciless and blinding. Your sandals wear thin until blistered soles bleed onto the hot white salt. Budur tears strips from her underrobe to bind your feet, her fingers gentle yet quick as she ties each knot, a quirky tidbit to distract you from your pain. Medieval Arabian pharmacists brewed poultices of crushed locust shells and rosewater to treat cracked desert feet, believing locust chitin strengthened skin against heat blisters. Unfortunately, your blistered feet remain firmly unstrengthened by this knowledge. By dusk on the third day, the salt flats give way to gravel plains littered with shattered basalt shards. The caravan halts beside a dry riverbed, where thorn bushes grow low and twisted, their tiny yellow blossoms filling the cooling air with a bittersweet, dusty scent. Fires are lit, and the camels grunt with relief as heavy bales are lifted from their weary backs. Budur leads you to a quiet hollow beside a giant fallen tamarisk trunk. There, shielded from wind and prying eyes, she unwraps a flat cloth bundle, revealing dried dates and a wedge of goat cheese wrapped in fig leaves. You chew in silence, grateful even for the gritty crunch of stray sand caught between date pits. As the stars blink alive overhead, Budur leans against you, her voice barely audible above the sighing wind. Do you regret leaving your kingdom behind? You glance sideways, studying her moonlit profile, the proud line of her nose, the delicate shadow where her jaw curves into her throat. No, you whisper honestly. My kingdom was never truly mine, but you are... She closes her eyes, a single tear slipping down to glisten upon her lips before the night breeze dries it away. Historians still argue whether such declarations were actual words passed down in oral tradition or the romantic embroidery of poets embellishing their emirs' lineages. But in this moment, under the unblinking gaze of desert stars, your vow is truth. Later that night, as the caravan sleeps and even the camels sigh in slumber, you remain awake. Your feet throb with heat and rawness, but your heart beats with a quiet strength you thought long dead. Beside you, Budur sleeps curled against your side, her breath warm upon your neck, far above. Maimuna watches from her drifting perch upon a high, silent wind. Beside her, Danash coils his emerald-scaled tail around an unseen breeze and hisses with grudging amusement. They are relentless, he murmurs, always choosing love over survival. Maimuna's bronze eyes glimmer with timeless understanding. That is precisely why their stories endure beyond the dust of kingdoms. Before dawn, the caravan rises once more. Campfires are doused, oil lamps extinguished, and morning prayers rise in soft murmurs from cloaked figures bowing upon prayer rugs laid over gravel. You rise stiffly, wincing as you stand. Budur helps you pull your robe straight, her touch firm and wordless. Then together, under a sky glowing with the first gray fingers of dawn, you walk onward, each step a silent promise to the other that no djinn, no king, no iron chain forged by mortal hand will ever keep you apart again. The road turns from cracked gravel to ochre sand, weaving through low hills covered with thorn bush and wild desert lavender. By mid-morning, the caravan winds along a narrow wadi where ancient tamarisk trees stand twisted against centuries of sun and wind. Their dry gray leaves rustle faintly in the breeze, whispering secrets of passing traders and lost kingdoms. Budur walks ahead, leading the weary white stallion. Its flanks tremble with exhaustion, but it continues obediently, head lowered. You limp beside her, sandals long discarded when their leather soles shredded into dangling strips. Now your feet are bound in rough cloth torn from your robe's hem, each step sending needles of pain shooting up your calves. A quirky tidbit to salt your suffering. Medieval Arabian wrestlers believed smearing feet with camel milk before dawn hardened the skin to endure hot sands. Unfortunately, you have only stale water left in your goatskin flask, and your soles burn with each step regardless. Around noon, the caravan halts beneath a sheer cliff where an ancient well stands surrounded by crumbling stone walls. Date palms shade the hollow, their fronds whispering against the cloudless sky. Herders draw water in copper pails, the liquid splashing into troughs where camels grunt with pleasure, their long necks dipping greedily to drink. Budur guides you to the shade and presses a folded fig leaf filled with cool water to your cracked lips. You sip, feeling life seep back into your sun-shriveled body. The world sharpens, the scent of dust and camel sweat, the jangle of brass bells tied to the beasts' harnesses, the murmured prayers of women seated nearby, weaving palm-frond baskets for trade. Historians still argue whether such wells truly existed in the trackless dunes or were inventions of storytellers. Shimmering mirages of mercy woven into tales for weary listeners, who feared the desert's unforgiving thirst. Budur crouches beside you, her dark eyes intent. "Tonight," she whispers, "we will leave the caravan. It veers south at dusk, but we must continue west if we are to reach the coast and board a ship to freedom." You blink at her, dizzy from pain and fatigue. "A ship? To where?" She lowers her gaze, voice trembling with resolve. "To anywhere beyond our father's reach. We will find a city that needs neither princes nor princesses, only two willing hearts." That afternoon, as the caravan trundles onward, you drift in and out of a half-dreaming stupor, lulled by the rhythmic crunch of camel hooves and the mournful whistle of desert winds. You dream of a palace garden overrun with wild thyme and scarlet poppies, where Budur sits weaving garlands of jasmine into your hair as jinn dance upon the fountain's marble rim. Maimuna hovers invisibly above the caravan, bronze wings flickering against the molten sky. She watches your fevered sleep with silent pity, her gaze shifting to Budur, who walks steadfast and unbowed despite the sweat dampening her indigo robe. Beside Maimuna, Danash coils his serpentine tail tighter around himself, eyes glimmering with wary respect. "Foolish mortals," he murmurs. "They do not realize the power they carry in choosing each other." Maimuna's smile is older than the dunes. They do realize. That is why they endure. At dusk, as the caravan turns southward between two towering sandstone cliffs, Budur guides you quietly away along a goat track leading west. The old herder sees your departure, but says nothing. Perhaps he remembers his own lost love from long ago, or perhaps the silver coin she gave him buys his silence. Night falls swiftly upon the desert. The sky darkens to indigo velvet, pricked with a million trembling stars. You limp beside Budur in silence, listening to your labored breath and the faint scuff of your cloth-wrapped feet upon the sand. Finally, when your legs threaten to collapse beneath you, Budur halts. She leads you to a rocky hollow sheltered from the wind. There, she spreads her thin blanket upon the sand, eases you down, and lies beside you beneath the vast echoing sky. You curl towards her warmth, burying your face against her shoulder. Her hand slides up to cradle your cheek, thumb stroking the salt-dried skin under your eye. The scent of sweat, sand, and faint rosewater clings to her, a fragrance more comforting than any palace perfume. Historians still argue whether this moment of intimacy was Scheherazada's way of humanizing royals for her audience, reminding them that even kings' children bleed and ache under the same indifferent stars as goat herders and spice sellers. But you do not think of kings or courts. You only think of her soft breath upon your temple and the fierce thrum of her heart against your chest. "Sleep," she whispers against your ear, her voice low and sure. Tomorrow, we walk to freedom. Above, Maimuna drifts in a silent spiral over your sleeping forms. Her bronze gaze softens with something like love. "Sleep well, children of fate," she whispers into the hush of the moonlit dunes. "For dawn will forge the path you have carved with your pain." Dawn comes like molten gold poured over the silent dunes. You wake to the warmth of Budur's arm draped across your chest, her breath fanning softly against your throat. For a long moment, you remain still, feeling the slow rise and fall of her ribs, the quiet strength in the curve of her palm where it rests against your heart. You turn your head slightly to study her sleeping face. Dust clings to the delicate arches of her brows, and a faint line creases her cheek where it pressed against the folded edge of the blanket. Yet, even in sleep, her jaw is set with fierce determination, as though her dreams themselves demand action. You smile faintly, despite the thirst rasping against your tongue. Then you gently touch her wrist. She stirs, lashes flickering open to reveal dark eyes still hazed with sleep. Seeing you awake, her expression softens into a tired smile. "We survived another night," you murmur. She nods, her fingers tightening around yours. "And today, we find the coast." You rise together and break your meager fast with the last of the dried figs and a swallow of stale water. Then, Budur takes your hand in hers and begins walking west once more, leading the stallion whose flanks are dusted pale gray with wind-blown sand. The land changes subtly with each passing mile. Dunes flatten into dry flats crusted white with ancient salt, then rise again into low rolling hills streaked with iron-red stone. Sparse tufts of silver grass bend in the thin breeze, whispering secrets in a tongue only the desert understands. Historians still argue whether their final journey took days or mere hours, for Scheherazada's narrative flutters between time's folds like a falcon diving through cloud. But as the sun climbs higher, your steps grow heavier, your breaths ragged with thirst and pain. Around noon, you crest a long ridge, and the world seems to open before you. There, far beyond the last ochre dunes, stretches an expanse of deep blue flickering with sunlight. The sea, a sob, chokes your throat. Budur grips your hand so tightly it aches. Tears glitter in her eyes as the salt breeze washes over you both, cool and damp and smelling of kelp, fish oil, and freedom, a quirky tidbit for this moment of triumph. Medieval Arab navigators, or muallims, memorized hundreds of star positions and ocean currents, mapping coasts long before European compasses arrived. Using poems as mnemonic charts sung beneath the sails, you descend together, the sand slipping underfoot as the breeze freshens. By late afternoon, you reach a small fishing village huddled between jagged basalt cliffs. Goats wander along rocky paths, nibbling at pale green seaweed draped over driftwood fences. Smoke curls from stone chimneys. Fishermen mend their net ropes with bone needles, glancing curiously at the dusty prince and veiled princess walking hand in hand down their sun-bleached street. Budur strides ahead towards a row of moored dhows, bobbing gently against the tide. The smallest bears a sail patched with old linen and a hull painted in peeling bands of red and turquoise. An old sailor lounges in its stern, chewing cloves and flicking fish scales off his calloused palms. She greets him with a respectful bow. "Captain, we seek passage west. We can pay." The old man squints at her, then at you, then back at her again. His gaze sharpens at the sight of the sapphire ring glinting upon your finger. "You flee royal blood," he rasps, his voice deep as a bullfrog's croak. "That brings trouble." Budur nods solemnly. "But it also brings gold." She reaches into her satchel and draws out a small velvet pouch. Opening it reveals 3 heavy gold dinars, their edges worn, but their gleam unmistakable. The sailor's eyes narrow with calculation. Finally, he spits into the sand and shrugs. "Bored before I change my mind." Historians still argue whether 3 gold dinars could truly buy untraced passage across the sea in a time of strict port registries, or if Scheherazade offered this shortcut to lull her sultan into sleep before dawn's thin blade threatened her life. You clamber aboard behind Budur, your legs shaking with exhaustion. The boat rocks gently underfoot, the wood warm from afternoon sun. Budur leads you to the prow, where she sits cross-legged and pulls you down beside her. She grips your hand tightly as the old sailor casts off his ropes and unfurls the patched sail. The boat glides forward, cutting through the jade-green shallows into deeper blue where sunlight dapples the waves in molten gold. The coast recedes behind you, the rocky cliffs and low stone houses shrinking to distant specks beneath a vast and empty sky. You watch Budur's face as wind streams her veil behind her shoulders. Her eyes shine with tears and salt spray, but her smile is fierce and unbowed. "I will never let them take you from me again," she whispers. Far above, Maimuna drifts upon the salt wind, her bronze wings trailing shimmering dust across the sky. Beside her, Danash curls around an invisible current, his emerald scales flashing in the sun. "Finally," he murmurs with grudging approval. "They sail beyond the reach of kings and jinn alike." Maimuna's smile is older than the tides. "For now," she agrees softly. But love writes its own ending, and its ink never dries. As the dow's prow cuts into deepening sapphire waters, you close your eyes and lean against Budur's shoulder. The rhythmic slap of waves against wood is a lullaby older than any throne. In your chest, your heart beats slow and steady, echoing the pulse of the sea beneath you, each throb a prayer of gratitude for the woman beside you, and the horizon unrolling in endless promise ahead. The dhow sails westward under a sky the color of old bronze, streaked with clouds like torn silk, drifting high above the endless sea. The wind hums low in the patched linen sail, carrying the brine-scented breath of freedom across the deck, where you and Budur sit together, shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in her thin indigo shawl against the morning chill. For hours, you watch the horizon slip past, each wave cresting with foam that catches the sunlight and scatters it in diamond sparks. Gulls wheel overhead, their shrill cries drifting down between the creak of ropes and the rhythmic slap of water against the hull. The old sailor hums as he steers, a tune so ancient and weathered it sounds like the ocean itself singing through his cracked lips. Budur leans her head against yours, her hair whipping across your cheek in the brisk breeze. You close your eyes to savor that touch, the warm press of her body against your side, the scent of salt and sun in her skin. Every breath feels like life reborn in your tired chest. Historians still argue whether their ocean escape led them to a real kingdom across the Western Sea, or whether Scheherazade invented this final voyage to soothe her sultan into sleep with the promise of unbreakable love that slips beyond mortal pursuit. As the sun climbs towards noon, the old sailor jerks his chin towards the horizon. "Land," he rasps. You squint, blinking against the glare. There, faint and wavering in the distance, rises a jagged silhouette of mountains cupping a green coastline. Palm trees sway along sandy crescents. You hear the faint echo of surf breaking upon rocks, even across these final miles of rolling swell. A quirky tidbit to ease your anxious heart. Medieval Arab dhows carried long, thin anchors carved from basalt to grip coral reefs without shattering, a design still used in some Omani fishing boats today. Budur grips your hand tighter. "Do you see it?" she whispers, voice shaking with disbelief and hope. You nod. "I see it. Our kingdom." She laughs softly, a sound like wind chimes stirring in a secret courtyard. "Not a kingdom, just a place where no one knows our names." The old sailor brings the dhow in close to shore, where turquoise waves foam over pale gold sand. You wade through the surf together, water splashing up to your thighs, your robe billowing heavy with brine. The beach is empty save for driftwood, polished white by sun and tide, and a few sand crabs that scuttle sideways into tiny holes at your approach. You turn to Budur, her hair plastered damp against her temples, salt glittering on her lashes like tiny pearls. She reaches up and brushes her thumb across your cheekbone, wiping away the spray clinging there. "We are here," she whispers, her voice fierce and trembling with relief. "Yes," you murmur. "We are free." You walk inland together, leaving wet footprints in the pale sand. Beyond the fringe of coconut palms rises a dense grove of tamarind and acacia, their shadows cool and green after the endless glare of the ocean crossing. The air smells sweet with crushed leaves and distant blossoms. Birds flit from branch to branch, calling in musical chirps that echo through the stillness. Maimuna drifts high overhead on a breeze scented with salt and blooming hibiscus. Danash coils lazily beside her, emerald scales flashing between shifting rays of sun. "They have reached the end of their road," he murmurs. Maimuna smiles, her bronze wings stirring the warm air. "No, old serpent, this is only the beginning. Love never ends. It merely grows quiet for a while, like waves upon a sleeping shore. Together, you and Budur walk deeper into the forest, your joined hands swinging lightly with each step. You say nothing, for words have become too small to hold the immensity of what you feel. The forest path curves towards a small river trickling over mossy stones, its gurgling song a welcome lullaby after days of wind and silence. You sit upon a fallen log to rest. Budur leans her head on your shoulder and sighs, her breath soft and even against your neck. You close your eyes, listening to the river's chatter, the rustling of leaves in the sea breeze, and her quiet breathing mingling with your own. Historians still argue whether they built a hidden home in these distant lands, raised children under palm-thatched roofs, and lived to old age, or whether fate carried them onwards into new dangers and new legends, lost again and again, only to find each other under different skies. But here, beneath towering tamarind trees and drifting hibiscus petals, no argument remains, only truth. You open your eyes and watch the sunlight dapple the forest floor, dancing through the shifting leaves. The ache in your feet fades. The hollow ache in your heart fills with warmth until it feels ready to burst. Budur lifts her head and meets your gaze. Her eyes are bright with tears and laughter. "This is it," she whispers. "Our own story." You lean forward and kiss her gently, tasting salt and sweet hibiscus on her lips. "Yes," you murmur against her mouth. "And no one will ever steal it from us again." Above, the breeze hums through the treetops, carrying the quiet blessing of ancient jinn who watch in silence, their luminous forms flickering like distant lanterns against the pale blue sky. The forest hush deepens as the sun sinks lower, its golden light softening to a dim and gentle glow between the tamarind trunks. The wind settles into a sleepy sigh, rustling only the highest leaves in a slow, lulling rhythm. You sit together on the fallen log, feeling the warmth of Budur's arm wrapped around yours, her head heavy with exhaustion upon your shoulder. A quiet peace pools in your chest, spreading outward with every slow, measured breath. Birds nestle deeper into the branches above, their evening songs fading to silence as the first pale stars blink awake in the violet sky. You hear the river still trickling nearby, its voice softer now, like a whispered promise of safety that flows endlessly through the darkening land. Each ripple sounds softer, each hush of breeze grows gentler, until all that remains is the comforting pulse of your heart, steady and slow. You feel Budur's chest rise and fall with each breath, warm against your ribs, her hair brushing softly beneath your chin. The shadows lengthen and blend into one seamless twilight that wraps you in quiet darkness. Your eyelids grow heavy, The ache in your feet, the dryness in your throat, the weary pull of your journey all drift away into the gathering dusk. The forest cradles you both in its cooling embrace. The hush deepens further, layered with the tender hush of rustling leaves and the faint whisper of distant ocean waves beyond the trees. You close your eyes. The warmth of her body and the hush of the world wrap around you like a blanket of peace. And there, in that quiet space between waking and sleep, you finally rest.